Greetings. My name is Donna Aufdenberg, and I'm a field specialist in horticulture with the University of Missouri Extension. And today I'm going to talk about starting plants for the cut flower garden. First of all, we want to choose varieties based on your local market demands, long-lasting blooms, longer stems, long shelf life after the harvest of the flowers, and don't forget the complementary colors, things that match and look great in the vase together. You want to plan first. I know I talked a lot about this during our first session. Basically, do your homework, find out what the plants need, whether they need to be sown indoors or outdoors, the number of days till germination, the temperature, or any special descriptions on how they need to be planted, depth of the seed, that does matter. Stratification or scarification. Stratification is cold, moist chilling, and we can accomplish that through a moist baggie with the seeds added and put them in the refrigerator for several weeks. Or you can try the milk jug method where we're sowing the seeds in soil in a milk jug and allowing the outdoor temperatures to fluctuate and break that seed dormancy. Scarification is when we're nicking the seed or damaging that seed coat to help that seed germinate because of a hard seed coat. And also the time it takes from seed to transplant. All this information can be found on on seed packets or in catalogs or even on web resources. So do your homework. Also, we have to think about whether we're going to be sowing those seeds indoors, outdoors, or whether we need to use transplants. There are some things you have to sow by seed. There are some things you have to use transplants on because of the length of growing season or the delicacy of the seeds. So just think about those things. There are things that we can do either or, but this is not an all-encompassing list. So definitely do your homework and find out what your plants, how they want to be started. In starting seeds, we need to think about the calendar and your hardiness zone. So in Cape Girardeau, our last average frost date is April 15th. So I always try to say, okay, I need to have everything in the garden May 1st. Things that are cold hardy, you can go a little earlier, but things that are just real sensitive to frost, you need to hit that May 1st date. Calendars are important. I usually have one calendar just for my dates. And so I can plan out what I'm going to be doing when. And we want to establish that target planting date. Once again, based on that frost date, then you count back by 6 to 8 weeks prior to that date, and you can get roughly your your seed starting date. And for example, purple basil, it takes 3 to 5 days germination on bottom heat. And then of course we transplant at 6 to 8 weeks after sowing. So once we do all that calculation, we want our sowing date to be around March 15th. And it can fluctuate based on what the weather is doing and how soon it seems that spring is going to be right upon us. Make sure to gather your supplies, pots, peat pots, cell packs, recycled materials. I know I have a lot of people that use yogurt cups. Try to collect your trays, your flats, and plastic domes. I'm not big about the plastic domes, but I know there's a lot of people that do use them. But most importantly, always start with new clean containers or clean containers. If they're dirty and you want to clean them, a 10% bleach solution will work. And there are several different commercial sanitizers on the market that won't stain clothes. They're a little pricier, but I use them because I always have my daughters helping me. So it's more of a safety feature for me. Think about your potting medium. You want a potting mix versus a potting soil, or you can use seed starting mixes, and you should not have fertilizer in it. Don't be cheap about the soil. That's a big thing I find. People try to do shortcuts. Poor quality soil can really cause disease problems and rotting off issues. And so try to always get quality stuff. Think about your environment. You need to think about the temperature, the light, and the moisture. Definitely pay attention to what the seeds want. Some seeds want to be germinated at warmer temperatures, some want to be at cooler temperatures. And so heat map for cooler temperatures, seeds will actually hinder the germination. So just do your homework and make sure you know what they want. Lights, one of the biggest mistakes I find that people do, one is they use old bulbs. Always start out with new bulbs. The other part is they have the light too far away. So always make sure that your lights are no more than 2 inches away from the seeds or the seedlings that are coming up. You can use grow bulbs, but they are expensive. If you want to, you can pair one cool white fluorescent with a grow bulb. It's a wonderful combination. And then, of course, moisture. Water can make or break you. So watch the moisture. Too much, too little can really hamper seed germination. So check seeds definitely a couple of days and make sure that they're not too soggy, but they're not too dry. On planting methods, anything is fine. Broadcasting, sowing in individual cells, in rows. Just the only thing is make sure that they're not too deep or too shallow, because those can hinder germination. And also think about the labeling and tagging. I love masking tape with pencil. I know some people will use the grease pencils, that's fine. But I've learned some hard lessons on using permanent markers. If you have a greenhouse and you use a permanent marker, it fades in that sunlight. So I have switched mainly to using pencil or the grease pencils. And that way I know that, let's say 6 weeks down the line, I will be able to tell what things are instead of trying to second guess. So over to the right, top picture is just, I'm working on sowing seeds. As you can see, I have 2 different methods. I really like the 20 row trays, and that way I can have 20 varieties in a flat. Other people really like the open cell packs. I mix and match. The next picture, middle left, is winter sowing. That is using milk jugs, and that is Liatris. And so when you have that freezing and thawing, it helps to germinate. Over to the right middle is some of those 20 row trays. That is a close-up picture of what the seeds look like in that 20 row tray. And then the bottom pictures are just other various sowing methods. Like I said, you can do just about anything. I really like keeping the rows, and only because if you get hit with a disease, the disease will follow the row and won't skip up over to the other sections. Seedling care, once you start to see germination, if you're using the domes, get the domes off, because if you leave them on too long, you end up getting seedling rot. And just remember, stagnant air means poor growth. So you might take a oscillating fan on low and set it around your seedlings so that they get plenty of air circulation. Thin if needed. I do know that the reason why I like the 20 row trays is because I can go in there and start transplanting and utilize every seedling. And so I don't have to rely on thinning. If you are sowing directly into the cell packs and you put in multiple seeds, then you're going to have to thin at some point. And then, of course, fertilize after true leaves appear. And, just pay attention, watch your seedlings, and make sure things are going well. And then harden off before moving outdoors. Just a little tidbit of advice. If you start to get long, lanky seeds, so back off on the watering and increase the light. Those are the 2 things that will cause lanky growth. And so just keep those things in mind. So over to the right is the 20 row tray I was talking about. They're a little pricey, but I can get 3 uses, 4 uses out of them. Sanitize in between growing cycles. And then, of course, the bottom is in the greenhouse once they've been transplanted. On sowing seeds outdoors, think about your timing and moisture content. I know I have a big problem with soil crusting, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then think about your weed control. And don't forget, depth of planting indeedly does matter here. And it's so easy to get the seeds too deep and then things don't come up. And then don't forget to plan for succession planting. So for zinnias, for example, you want to sow one day, come back 2 to 3 weeks later, sow another line, 2 or 3 weeks later, sow another line. And that way they will keep you in flowers, especially when we hit mid-season and the first batch start to fizzle a little. So keep that in mind. On soil crusting, what I find really beneficial is putting a fine layer of peat moss or fine layer of straw over my seed bed. And once the seeds are planted, and so if we get any rains or adverse conditions, the straw or the peat moss will deflect raindrops and won't compact the soil, and they will help hold in that moisture. And so that's what I find is a lot of times I will get my seed beds done, and all of a sudden we get a couple hot days and it dries out. So monitor these seed beds and make sure they stay wet or moist. And then also make sure you don't have the soil crusting, because the soil crusting will keep seeds, especially small ones, from germinating. And care seedlings when they come up, check on them every day. Water. This picture over to the right is my girls. We were watering every day because we got into a dry, warm period. And so they were starting to suffer. So we were out there every evening watering. Be prepared to fight the weeds. I used a cheaper weed barrier. I learned a hard lesson. I will be definitely using a more expensive, better quality weed barrier this year. And then consider mulching. You don't want to always have to be fighting the weeds. And some of these small seedlings don't compete well with weeds. And of course, don't forget to fertilize at least once a week, if not more. And then once the seedlings start getting bigger, don't forget to cage or stake them. And so that's all I have for you on this go around. And happy gardening.